we made Hillary uncomfortable back there, and he was frustrated. He wasn't able to get the ball. He wasn't able to get to the ball out when he wanted to, and it was a very solid performance, I think, particularly by the secondary.
Yeah, definitely. The secondary, absolutely. I think the reason Hillary didn't put up great numbers is because he had nowhere to go. Our secondary, we played very, very tight on their receivers, and it was just good, solid defense in the secondary all the way around. Anytime Hillary seemed to have a receiver to go to, we were in Hillary's face every time, it seemed like. Whether it was on a rollout or it was a blitz up the middle, whatever, we were in Hillary's face a lot, and it caused a lot of breakdowns in their offensive plays. And then added to that,
yeah, and I think that we got a little pressure on them. The secondary played well. I will say, just to kind of temper our expectations a little bit, is that it is a little bit hard to gauge how much of that success was just due to just due to great play by our defense, and how much of that was due to the fact that we pretty much came into the game knowing that they weren't going to be able to run the ball on us, which they really were not. They ended up with 114 yards. Again, some of that came late, but they weren't able to move the chains on the ground, and we'd kind of seen that from them coming into the game. So it will be interesting to see how we do when we play a team that's a little bit more balanced, because they do have a very good passing attack. Hillary's a good quarterback. He's got some good weapons to pass to. But at the same time, we knew they weren't going to be able to run the ball. I think we would have had to make some adjustments, take out a defensive back if they had, but we came into it knowing they were looking to pass the ball. So we had 6 defensive backs, for a majority of the game. And I'll be interested to see how the team responds when we have a team that's a little more balanced, and we've got a little more traditional setup there in the defense. But you really can't, on either side of the ball, nitpick too much about what they did, because the fact is they only gave up 14 points and the offense was rolling all day. So they really did look very solid, and I think, unfortunately for Coastal, we might have kind of laid a game plan out there that all the other teams they face this year are probably going to use against them. I wouldn't be surprised if 2 weeks from now when they play Stony Brook, they see 5 or 6 defensive backs right there, and basically having the rest of their opponents daring them to run the ball.
Yep, yeah, I agree with that 100%. The lack of running game for Coastal definitely played a part into, obviously, us starting 6 defensive backs. We knew that they were going to pass and pass again and then pass again before they ran. So that definitely helped. And then also, I think what helped our defense is the fact that our offense was playing so well. We made them pass. Even if they wanted to run, they wouldn't be able to, because of how well our offense was playing, how quick they were scoring, and how much they were scoring. And Coastal being down by so much, if you throw in a heavy rushing attack, obviously that's going to take longer than a passing attack. So and they knew they needed to score in a hurry, and they just were not going to do that with a rushing game. Even if it was a top-notch rushing game, they would not be able to do that. They would have to pass a lot more than they would want to if they were a balanced attack. Obviously, not being a balanced attack, they wanted to pass anyway, but our defensive backs were able to basically play a bend but don't break defense and give them the little short 4 or 5 yard passes at a time, and then once we got pressure on Hillary, he either made an errant throw or had to get rid of it or whatever, and that definitely played a part.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The defense did look good, but at the same time, an offense just racking up yards and points like we were, really lends itself to making your defense look good. So, again, anything we really pick that's a negative out of this game is almost seems like nitpicking when you more than double the offensive production of the other team. You put 55 points up offensively. You limit them to 14 points. There's you're kind of nitpicking a little bit, but there are some things we need to improve on. I still think we haven't been truly tested by a really balanced offense, and I think that we'll see that as we get into the season, but. It was a great performance. I do think in terms of things we need to improve on, I think that, our pressure up front from the defensive line does need to get a little bit better. There are times where, we're getting those quarterback hurries, but we're not getting the sack. And times where, maybe we're getting behind the line of scrimmage, but we're not dragging that running back down the first chance we get. So those are things that we need to that we do need to work on. But it was a very encouraging performance, and another thing that is kind of an area of concern that you and I spoke about earlier is the fact that our backup quarterback Cam Bryant was lost for the season in this game with a knee injury, and we had little to no depth behind Jamal Jackson to begin with. Before Saturday, Cam Bryant had never taken a snap at the college level, and unfortunately, his first action here in the Black and Gold resulted in him getting hurt. So now Logan Halleck steps into the number 2 role. He also has never taken a snap at the college level, so it basically went from being important to keep Jamal Jackson healthy to nearly vital to our season. And I do like what I've seen out of Jamal, and that if he's running the ball, he's not always necessarily trying to get that big gain. He usually gets down or gets out of bounds once he finds the first down marker. He's not a guy that really wants to take off. He is a pass-first quarterback, so I think we might see him lean that way even a little bit more now that our depth has been hurt even further. So depth at quarterback is a concern going forward, and I think we do need to continue to get a little bit more pressure up front of the defensive line. But otherwise, the Coastal game was pretty much a big win for all 3 facets of the team.
Yep, yeah, and I was going to say that my area of concern is our lack of quarterback depth, especially now that Cam Bryant is out. Logan Halleck, everything that I've read, he had a great spring. He's a talented kid, but like you said, he hasn't taken a snap. I believe he actually did take 2 snaps in this past game, but they were handoffs after Bryant went out. I believe Halleck was in there for 2 handoffs to Frazier, and that was about it. So he hasn't been in a main quarterback role yet, and he is young, and honestly, I don't know what to expect out of him because I've never seen or heard a whole lot, because Cam Bryant was second, and then before the season started, Khalif Barnes was supposed to be in there as well. So more people, we were hearing more about him than we were Halleck. So that's my main area of concern is the lack of quarterback depth now. And then also, like you said, just getting the pressure on the quarterback is obviously good, but we need to finish it. We need to bring the quarterback down. But contrary to that, we have not played a team yet that did not have a very athletic quarterback. So yeah, we got a lot of pressure on them, but we have not played one that's a true pocket passer who's just going to stay in the pocket and not roll out of the danger that when we do rush. So in the defense of the defense and not being able to get more sacks at the same time, we're playing very athletic quarterbacks, and we will all year long. The only one that we'll be playing against in the SoCon, I believe, is going to be against Elon, a true pocket passer. So hopefully we'll see more sacks in this game.
Yeah, and from what I understand, the Elon offensive line is kind of a makeshift bunch at this point as well. They've had some guys lost to injury, so they're thin up front. They've got some some guys that were came into the program as walk-ons that are playing up front, and so they're not particularly strong on the offensive line. They are very, very weak rushing team. Their offense pretty much begins and ends with Thomas Wilson and Aaron Millette. Millette, in my opinion, is the best receiver at the FCS level of football, and I'm not sure it's really all that close. He is just an incredible talent. I watched that guy play last year and the last couple of years. I remember sitting in the stadium at Elon, and as great a player as Brian Quick was, obviously he was the 33rd pick in the draft. He's an incredible athlete. I left that stadium thinking that he was the second best receiver on the field that day. And Aaron Millette's really, really impressive. And he's having a great year again this season, as is Thomas Wilson. But they really struggle to run the ball, and I think we might see a similar defensive alignment we saw last week, because They really do have a great passing game. They're only averaging 100 yards per game on the ground, but even that statistic is very, very misleading. Of the 500 rushing yards that they have this season, 301 of those came against Division II West Virginia State. So against teams that play at the Division I level, they've rushed for 199 yards in 4 games. That's just under 50 yards rushing per game. They rushed for under 50 last week against Wofford. They've not even sniffed 100 yards against anyone else they've played aside from West Virginia State. So they really have not been able to move the ball on the ground. So we will be able to sit back on their passing game. But that being said, their passing game is a dangerous one. The most important thing is that Thomas Wilson's really cut down on his turnovers in spite of the fact that he doesn't have the benefit of any kind of running game. He threw 21 interceptions last year. Through the first 5 games this year, he's completing 63% of his passes. He's thrown 10 touchdowns and only 4 interceptions. So he's really cut down on the turnovers. So it'll be interesting to see how our secondary is able to do against a passing game like Elon has, which will probably be the best one we've seen this season. Aaron Millett's got 423 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns. Their defense, again, a little bit hard to gauge because their statistics look like you would expect out of a team that's just faced 2 triple option teams. They faced Georgia Southern and Wofford the last 2 weeks. So they're giving up an average of 238 rushing yards, only 124 passing yards. But again, they've played a couple of teams that make their living on the ground. So what we see out of their defense, I think, is still a little bit of an unknown. But they are a team that is they are. If we thought Coastal Carolina was unbalanced, they're even more unbalanced. They will be passing the ball pretty much all day, regardless of what the score is, whether we're ahead, whether we're behind. They're not going to probably be even. It's possible they might try to establish the run game early, but if they're not able to, get some big gains on the ground early, I really don't think. I really don't think we'll even see them attempting to rush that much. They might abandon the run game pretty early because, frankly, they're just not very good there, and they have 2 really big weapons in Wilson and Millette. So it'll be interesting to see, how our team responds. It's going to be, the second big test in a row for the secondary.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, Elon had. They were a SoCon contender when they had Scott Riddle and Terrell Hudgens back there, and really. Wilson and Millette they're a clone almost. Wilson is, after last year's game against Elon, Coach Moore said that Wilson was the best quarterback that they faced in the SoCon all year. And then Aaron Millette, in my opinion, is better than Hudgens, just because he's faster. He's got better hands, and I mean Hudgens he ran great routes. He had good hands, but he was relatively slow. And honestly, that's probably the reason he's not in the NFL right now, just because he didn't have that top-notch speed that you need to be an NFL player. But Aaron Millette does have that, and he's a big guy. He's exactly like you said, Mike. He might be better than Brian Quick. I mean, obviously Brian Quick, we all love him, and and he's like you said, 33rd pick in the draft, so he's obviously an extreme talent as well. But Aaron Millette is among the best, if not the best, wide receiver at the FCS level and one of the top in the nation, regardless of level. Thomas Wilson his only flaw last year was his interception ratio. He had 21 interceptions, and I mean that's almost 2 a game. Anytime a quarterback averages almost 2 interceptions a game, it's going to be hard to. Especially in the Southern Conference, where we got 3 triple option teams who thrive on getting turnovers and running at the clock, and then you have App who runs fast-paced offense and just wants to score as fast as he possibly can, and so it's going to be hard. It would be hard for them to have a solid record last year with that interception ratio, but he like you said, he's cut that off this year, and I think really the only thing that is hurting Elon is their lack of a running game.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Last week against Wofford, was pretty indicative of how their season has gone. They passed for 361 yards, but were only able to rush for 49. 410 yards of offense, that looks great. But if you're not able to keep the defense guessing and, and be able to have that balance, it's going to be hard to win games because that means the defensive line's able to pin their ears back and go after the quarterback every play and not worry too much about the run. You're not really going to get the secondary to bite on play action. So, it really shrinks your playbook and, makes it a little easier to defend when you're that one dimensional. But, that being said, I'm not expecting that Elon's going to come into Boone and roll over for us. We escaped, had to come from behind and win.